The latest tech.
I'm Alexa. I can answer your questions.
Interviews.
And we are evolving, and we are seeing an amazing opportunity that's happening.
Accessibility.
Accessibility is one of our core values. It's even a part of our mission statement.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to another edition of Double Tap TV. Thank you guys so much for being here each and every single week. Thank you for reaching out on email, feedback at ami.ca. We get your emails each and every single week, and we love talking about them. If not here, we also talk about them on Double Tap Canada, which you can hear on AMI Audio every single Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Of course, on Twitter, it is at Double Tap Canada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap, and now on Instagram at DoubleTap.online. This week, we're talking all about screen reading in 2021. What's the good, what's the bad, what's the ugly of those text-to-speech applications that have been assisting blind people to use computers and now smartphones for how many years, Stephen Scott?
A long time. I mean, maybe not as much as you think, but certainly, I'd say 30 years.
Stephen Scott is by my side each and every single week, and of
Hi.
course, joins me once again. Stephen, you've been using a wide range of screen readers, whether it be, platform agnostic, really. I mean, iOS, Android devices when you're testing them, computers, PC, Mac, a lot of them, right?
Absolutely. I use everything. I mean, it feels that way anyway. I use JAWS on a PC, which I generally use each day. I use VoiceOver on the Mac, so I can use that, as well as VoiceOver on every other Apple product I have, which of course is all of them. I also use ChromeVox, which when I decide to pull out the Chromebook and test it. Also, I have a range of technologies that have got their own built-in screen readers as well, such as my Olympus dictaphone, even my good old talking dictionary.
My God, wouldn't you wish, is there a dream of yours one day that you'll wake up and at least the experience will be the same on every single device?
Well, my dream would be to have everything silent. That would be the ideal world. But I haven't quite figured out how a silent screen reader would work. Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? It'd be great if you could just have all the experiences the same, but they're not the same. They are totally different across all. I mean, I say totally. There are differences between the products, but there is no uniformity for sure, and that's a problem.
Now, would you say that you're a typical user of screen readers?
No, probably not. No, I mean, it's fair to say, a lot of us blind folks use a range of tools through our day to get their job done. So I mentioned, for example, I use JAWS, right? So I also use Narrator, which is a screen reader built into Windows. I use that from time to time when JAWS just can't get to where I need it to get to and read what I need it to read. Occasionally, I'll even fire up TalkBack on Android devices when I'm testing that out too. So not a typical user, perhaps, but certainly average.
I remember once you asking me to check your screen on a FaceTime call when you were having issues. And your response did surprise me because you said, I don't have a screen, Mark. And I was like, what? You don't actually have a screen? And then it kind of clicked, right? You don't actually need a screen, but at the same time, you only use the voice to guide you. You don't need any visual cues because I know you have some vision.
That's right. It's actually the best way to learn and use a screen reader. They aren't really built to be looked at. They're not attractive, Mark. They're not like us. Screen readers are unattractive. I can say that. I don't think that's controversial. But what happens on the screen while using a screen reader won't often make sense visually, which is why if you're sighted and you're talking to a JAWS user and you're sort of pointing at the screen saying, it's the button on the top right, it doesn't always make any sense to us because when you're going through with a screen reader, that's not how the screen reader reads the screen, right? And it's interesting because I do have a little bit of sight, but sometimes it's just enough to get in the way. So, I'm sometimes straining to see what's happening on the screen. And because of that, and the way the system works, I'm getting focused on visuals and not what the reader is telling me. So turning the screen off makes me a better screen reader user and ultimately a better computer user.
I guess that makes sense, but it's also super interesting as well. We're going to be talking a lot more about screen readers on this episode, and one in particular, because coming up next, we're going to be joined by Matt Adder, who's one of the guys behind the screen reader that Stephen was talking about, and that is JAWS. Not the film, but the software. Matt joins us from his parent company, which is Vispero, and that is coming up next here on Double Tap TV. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo. Again, if you want to get involved, it's feedback at ami.ca, on Twitter at Double Tap Canada with the hashtag AskDoubleTap, and of course now on Instagram it is at DoubleTap.online. Back in a moment with Jaws.
Love Double Tap TV? Listen to AMI Audio for Double Tap Canada every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern for news and reviews on everything tech. This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome back to Double Tap TV. Thank you guys, as always, for being here each and every single week. This week, we're talking all things screen reading, and we're sitting down with a very special guest from one of the leading screen reading manufacturers. I am Mark Aflalo. He is Stephen Scott. Stephen, who's standing by with us?
Well, with me now is Matt Ater, the Vice President of Corporate Business Development at Vispero. Now, that is the company that owns the popular JAWS screen reading software for Windows users. Now, Matt, great to have you here on Double Tap TV. Let me ask you the most obvious question I can think of first. What is a screen reader, for those who don't know? And specifically, what is JAWS software?
Yeah, and what a great movie it was, right? Yeah, so JAWS stands for Job Access with Speech, and Ted Henner and his company, Henner Joyce, built back in the, late 80s, early 90s, were, deploying software in DOS platforms and eventually, developed one for the Windows platform. And that's why it's called JAWS for Windows. But screen readers basically back in those days were, scraping the screen to grab the data and feed it back to the person and using synthetic speech to read it to them. And if all it did was read what you were on, that wouldn't be enough. And so an example is if you're browsing a website, if you landed on something and it's an edit field and you had to search for something, you want to know what you're searching for and type it in, that's fine. But then what it returns is more important. And, it's important that what a screen reader does is try to gather the data, provide it to the person in a useful way. And the challenge for somebody who's blind is that we can't look at the entire screen visually and say, hey, down there in the bottom right corner is the button I need to click. So I found the item, I've added it to my cart, and between me and that button is 50 tabs. Well, that's a very painful process for a blind person to go through, and a very time consuming and not very useful time. But if a sighted person just sees the button, it's a button that says submit my order, they just take their mouse and click it. And so can a screen reader do more than just make it so that a user tabs their way till they find that submit button? And that's kind of the power of what a screen reader would have to do. If all it did was read from top to bottom, it's almost like taking a web page and making it a podcast or making it an MP3 file that you just click the play button at the top of the web page. Would that be enough for a blind user? And the answer is no.
JAWS isn't the only screen reader in town, as you know, Matt. There's NVDA, which is non-visual desktop access, and of course the built-in Microsoft Narrator screen reader, which has seen major improvements in the past few years. Now, these alternatives are free. How do you, as a company that charges for your screen reader, continue to justify that, and how do you compete against these free alternatives?
So there's a couple things. One part is when you're at a work site, and I want to start with that because that's where JAWS has been the most success is in workplace settings. You need support. You need to know that this is going to exist tomorrow. You need to know that the technology has gone through the security testing and all the protocols to support a workplace environment. Your IT folks need to be able to reach out and solve problems at times. And that's a big part to what a corporation looks for when selecting technology. Additionally, I think it's the robustness of some of the features within JAWS software that's different from other screen readers today. One, the scripting technology, and people will mention that other screen readers have scripting technology. I get it. But part of the foundation of what makes JAWS successful is the scripting and the community around it that provides the training and scripting services. So if you look across the uh, different places where you may live, and I'll just use in the United States for the moment, but it could be the same in Scotland or the UK or wherever. And the thing is that there are thousands and thousands of people who just train assistive technology every day. And what did they grow up on and what did they learn at the beginning was JAWS. And so I'm pretty comfortable thinking that, yes, they may teach other screen readers, but in the end, their core business of instruction is still going to be workplace assessment, because that's what the agencies for the blind are going to pay someone to do training for. They're not going to train you just to sit at home and browse Amazon. They're going to train you to be able to get a job. And so the foundation of the people around the community of assistive technology, have been using and training this product for so many years that that's a big part of the success of this product. When it comes to the scripting power, it's still one of the most powerful scripting tools out there for customizing the applications. And there's personal scripters out there. There's businesses who do scripting. There's some in the UK. There's some in the US who just do this for a living, and it's a core part of their business to go into corporations and customize JAWS to work with third-party applications. Not always because of accessibility problems, but also because of usability problems. It's not enough to be accessible. It's also usable. And that example of trying to buy something on the website where I filled it out and I added it to my cart, but I have to hit the submit button. I don't want to press the tab 50 times to get to the submit button. I need something quicker. The other day, somebody asked me, how do I post in 7 groups on Facebook instantaneously that quickly? And I said, well, I put place markers on the page that JAWS allows me to create. Whenever I get to that page, I hit the letter K to jump to the place marker. I press enter, I hit paste. I hit shift B twice, press enter, go to the next group, do the same. It's not instant, but it feels like it because they're all posted at the same, 3-minute window. And part of that is my experience in using it, but part of it's knowing the features of the product.
There is a problem, though, isn't there, that employers, not employees perhaps, will look at the costs of paying for a software solution such as JAWS and then look and say, hey, but there are these other free options out there. Is there any danger that the choice will be made purely on cost?
I would see it as a messaging problem that we do need to encourage people to understand, that employers or technical people in general don't understand the true user experience of what blind people have to do every day. And so if you sat down and had to use narrator every day, which I'm commending Microsoft for the efforts they're putting into it, and keep in mind that it's a screen reader not just for a Windows platform, but for all of their devices. And so what they're offering in places like Xbox and things like that are just wonderful for the community, right? That's something that didn't exist years ago. And so if you look at it from a perspective of what they're investing in, I think they've done a nice job. They also do it, to make sure that they understand what they're coding right in Word and Windows and things like that is being properly identified by the technology that they're building. So there's lots of reasons behind the value of narrator, and I still think that having a narrator on an operating system for the capability of me reinstalling something at a Windows level and being able to read the screen is pretty cool. But I would say that employers or technical people in companies that are not screen reader users, um, there is challenges around people thinking that they could just get by with it. And I would love for them to put them in our shoes and have them sit down and try to use a computer with a screen reader and tell me which one you're going to choose. And I think in most cases they would realize why JAWS is superior in their workplace is due to a lot of the tasks that people have to perform. People don't go to a job and just read email and write Word documents without having to edit those Word documents. They don't go and just browse a website.
We were in conversation with Matt Ader from Vispero, talking all about JAWS and screen reading in 2021. He is Stephen Scott. I am Mark Aflalo. We're going to take a quick break and come back and continue that conversation here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. This is Double Tap TV.
Back on Double Tap TV, thank you guys, as always, for being here each and every single week. We're in conversation with Matt Ader from Vispero, the company behind such brands as Jaws, Zoom Text. We're talking all about Jaws today, though. I am Mark Aflalo with Stephen Scott by my side. Stephen, that conversation continues.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And here's something that I know will excite you, Mark. You do love your voice assistants. Jaws have recently added their own smart assistant to this year's release of Jaws. Matt Ater, talk us through that and why you decided as a company to do that.
A lot of it comes down to that we have um, a user base that's new to computing who may grow up on an iPhone or other device that's not a PC with a keyboard and things like that. And they weren't taught, you know, 1,000 keystrokes. And my head spins with the number of keystrokes. I was joking that I can actually still have nightmares where I'll have sweats and I'll wake up and say, "What's that keystroke?" You know, like seriously, was it Control F1 or Insert F1 or whatever? It's like, oh my God, there's so many keystrokes. And yes, we have a command search, but you know, you have to know how to get there, right? You have to know the keystroke to do it. And so the beauty of something like this in time, it's growing, is to hear what people are asking for it to do, and then for us to determine, is that something we need to put into the product to make it easier for you to do it? And you know, some of the stuff in JAWS, again, JAWS users are taught to use keystrokes, so they probably are perfectly fine pressing Insert D to bring up your dictionary manager, but that may not be the one that really needs to be a focus on. It's the future. It's not the 20 commands or 10 commands we put in there now, or 50, whatever number we're up to. It's what we put in there in the future to make your job easier. So for example, I used virtualize current control a lot. Now, who wants to remember that's the word I have to search, right? Um, you know, that's insert shift V. That's a painful command to remember, and it takes two hands, right? Could I do this quicker by saying virtualize that? And if I did that, then it just brought it up into a window and read it to me. That may be easier for me. Or copy that to the clipboard. Control C. Oh yeah, I can do that with one key, with one hand. I do it all the time. But maybe I just want to say it, and maybe I forgot that command. But those are the two commands that I use every day, so they're probably okay. But there could be some others that I can't remember. And so if we could, you know, things like make it faster or make it louder. I mean, those are easy things, and everybody reaches for those commands. But it's amazing. You've seen it in Facebook. It's amazing how many people say, "How do I make Jaws talk faster on the fly?"
Matt, let me ask a question here. It's fascinating to learn about the amount of work that goes into building a screen reader. But how do you guys keep up with the never-ending updates that come from Microsoft and the continual changes in the operating system? That can't be easy.
Screen readers have changed along with the operating systems and the other productivity tools drastically in the last several years, if you think about it, because when you first bought JAWS 20 years ago, you bought it in a box and you got a box delivered to you, and you had a CD and you put it in the player and it played some music and installed the software and did all this stuff. Updates didn't have to come out as frequently either. And they didn't have to come out as frequently because guess what? Microsoft delivered something in a box as well back then. You know, forget the operating system. The operating system barely changed. I'm sure it did, but it was mostly patches, you know, for security things. But think about Office. You got Microsoft Office 2007 or 2010 or 2013. It never changed. Maybe security patches, but no dramatic changes. And then 2016 comes along, kind of looked like it wasn't going to do that. And then 365 came along and boom. Just think about it. Like they're changing every 4 weeks at the, you know, probably at a normal pace. Maybe it's 6, but it's, you know, it's not every 2 years, right? And so that's a lot of pressure on organizations like ours and I'm sure others as well, to adapt to those changes. And the big products are going to be productivity tools. Windows, obviously, a couple times a year, but the browsers too. Edge, Chrome, Firefox, they're changing regularly. And when I say regularly, it just every time you turn your computer, you just don't know what the change has been. And I could use remember, I don't remember, it's last year, the year before, there was I think it was last August, there was a change in Firefox that nobody expected, and when that happened, you know, it was effect to Firefox. It was an effect to blind users using JAWS. I don't know if it happened to other screen readers as well. And within a week or so, Firefox pushed out an update to correct whatever that was, and that was a big hit to users. And that's why you can't be exclusively on one screen reader 100% of the time. You sometimes need a backup.
Thanks, Matt. Everybody, that is Matt Ader, the VP of Corporate Business Development over at Vispero, the parent company of JAWS. Thank you so much for joining us here on Double Tap TV this week. Stephen, did you learn a little bit, or did you know all this stuff? You smarty pants, you.
Well, I know some of it, but not all of it. And that's, as Matt says himself, the screen reader world is huge, and there are so many options out there. I mean, we've only touched on the Windows side this week. Okay, on the Mac side, you only have VoiceOver. But there is no alternative to any real accessibility tools when you think about it on Apple, which is interesting. Google has got Android, and Chrome Vox on Chromebooks as well. There are other options, other technologies out there, so let's not forget that. But Windows is the most commonly used operating system out there, bar none. And when it comes to employment, it does seem that JAWS is the answer, and it's important to recognize that. But it's also important, I think, for people to be aware of the free options out there for home use, and also just for doing those little extra tasks that perhaps JAWS just can't quite manage. I think we've learned a lot about that today from Matt.
Well, what are your guys' favorite screen readers? Let us know. Email us, feedback@ami.ca. Reach out on Twitter. It's @DoubleTapCanada, and use that hashtag #AskDoubleTap. And of course, now on Instagram, we were @doubletap.online. Let us know what you think, and let us know what your favorite features. Maybe let us know what features you'd like to have, and we'll pass it on to Matt Ader, the VP of Corporate Business Development over at Vispero. Thank you again for joining us. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Mark Aflalo. We will chat with you guys again next week here on Double Tap TV.
For more great Double Tap TV content, visit ami.ca/doubletap. Hosted by Mark Aflalo and Stephen Scott. Editing, Will Latar. Production assistants, Wendy Kaufman. Content review, Zachary Aflalo. Social media, Andy Wynn. Segment producer, Sean Priest. Voiceover, Anna Vicino. Integrated Described Video Specialist, Ron Rickford. Coordinating producer, Jennifer Johnson. Director, Production, Kara Nye. Director, Programming, Brian Perdue. VP Content Development and Programming, John Melville. President and CEO, David Arrington. Copyright 2021, Accessible Media, Inc.